Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the DJ Sessions Presents the Virtual Sessions. I'm your host Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and coming in all the way from Marina Del Rey, Los Angeles, we have Jacob Henry from Monstercat Silk on the other end. How you doing today, Jacob?
Doing great. Good to see you, Darren.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since ADE last October, and being at Milkweek for my first time, my first ADE, and had a great time backstage. I think I walked into that show with Shingo playing and was completely blown away, hanging out in the green room with y'all back there, doing interviews, meeting the team, and that was just such a memorable time. And I want to say thank you and the big shout out to the Monstercat team for making that happen. And it's great to have you here today because we are going to be talking about you're coming to Seattle. And
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah. I
go.
um I want
It's
to
go.
thank you as well for that great experience in Amsterdam and getting to spend time with you there. That was a really big moment for us to have our first ADE showcase as Monstercat Silk. And for the viewers that aren't already aware, we were Silk Music for 12 years, and then in 2021 officially we launched as Monstercat Silk after being acquired by Monstercat. So that was our first showcase, sort of post pandemic, and that in itself was exciting. But also to have BT and Shingo Nakamura and Vintage and Morelli and Prof performing, four of our leaders and sort of four of my musical heroes as well. It was a really special night, and you came all the way from the States to be there for that, and joined us backstage and had some great times there.
Yeah, I remember when I first decided to go to ADE. I'd never been there before. I'd never been to Europe before. And
Oh, I didn't
so
know.
I was really like ramping up. I wanted to become an ADE partner and get all involved with it. And they said, well, what's your proposal? What's your ideas you have? And I was talking with people that had been before, and they said, you know what? The best thing to do is just go and figure it out when you get there. So I went from this big thing that I wanted to partner with it just to like, okay, I'm just going to go play it by ear. I'll schedule some interviews, schedule some backstage time, and get some stuff, get some work done and press stuff during the day. But Amsterdam is such a beautiful city.
Extraordinary. I've been there maybe 6 or 7 times now, all for ADE. Starting maybe first time was like 2015 or 2014. I think I had gone every year up into the beginning of the pandemic, and then we took a few years off for that reason, and then we kind of came back, roaring back. So excited to finally return. But yeah, it's one of my favorite cities in the world. Architecturally, it's just outrageously beautiful and kind of stuck in time, preserved in time. They've done a great job keeping that sort of heritage and like link back to the history. And there's some amazing museums there, some of the best art museums in the world, most famous art museums in the world, given their the many famous painters from that area. Yeah, and just like what a time to be, around thousands of people in the music industry, all in this concentrated place. You're walking down the street, and in the span of 5 minutes, you see like 10 people that you either know already or have wanted to meet. And it's for those of you that haven't been to ADE and are thinking about going, I really couldn't recommend it more as like both a cultural experience that you'll never forget, but also just in terms of your networking and industry opportunities. You'll probably find that it'll be an amazing opportunity for you.
Yeah, that's. I mean, luckily I had gotten a schedule process down so people could sign up with me, and I announced that we were going to be there on site doing interviews on the back end. There's such a huge resource when you get into the back end of ADE and you get your pass, and then you can start networking with people and setting up meetings beforehand. So
Yeah.
we get over there like, let's meet up, let's talk, let's get,
Yeah,
get
and the secret is fill about half your calendar with meetings that you scripted ahead of time, and then leave half of your calendar open because you're going to see so many folks you didn't even anticipate seeing, or you just want to have a little bit of an improvisational ability to like, oh yeah, let's duck into this cafe or this bar and hang out for a few hours. Let's make it happen while you're there. So yeah, but it's such a great use of your time if you're in the industry, it couldn't be a better use of your time to be there.
and speaking of traveling and coming, we mentioned this a little earlier, but you're going to be coming to Seattle here in May to Aura Nightclub,
Yes.
and you're going to be coming with a couple special guests. That one of them, it's their first time ever playing here in Seattle. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Darren, thank you for teeing this up. This is certainly the biggest news right now from Silk. And couldn't be more relevant to where you are and the history of the DJ sessions. But yeah, basically, to summarize, we have a special weekender planned to celebrate the 700th episode of our radio show, which is called Monstercat Silk Showcase. So if you do the math, every week for 700 episodes, we're coming up on 15 years, which is basically how the age of our label. We founded Silk in 2008. So we I think launched the first episode of the radio show within a year after our first release. So those timelines are pretty much consistent. Yeah, and we've done milestone episodes before in various places around the world. We actually did an event in Tokyo that Shingo played at, and we even were in Seattle 5 years ago for episode 450. You were there for that, Darren. We had an artist by the name of Marsh, who I think now has become a household name in the space. Marsh was there. Our friends 11, who are still killing it and still playing shows around North America and beyond. And myself, I played there as well. Now 5 years later, it's 700, and this time around we have none other than BT playing on Saturday night. BT is one of just a few artists that we always credit as inspiring Silk in terms of the aesthetic and sound of the label. BT, Chicane, and Robert Miles always come up in conversation whenever we get asked that question of like, who are the forefathers, who are the trailblazers and the inspirations for this, like, sort of the progressive, melodic and atmospheric style of music that we put out on Silk. So to have him there representing the show, and it couldn't be more meaningful to me, but also kind of relevant to the history of the label. BT is also doing work with Silk now on the music side, and I'll be able to share more about that soon. But you may have already heard a remix that he did for us not too long ago of a Shingo Nakamura song called Darling Midnight, and that was his debut on the label. And he's going to have more music coming. Nice. Speaking of Shingo, Shingo is making his Seattle debut. You kind of hinted at this a second ago, Darren. And Shingo Nakamura has been one of our leaders on Silk for many years now. He's actually been releasing with us for nearly 15 years. I think our first release with him was in 2009. He put out his debut album with Silk called Sapporo, which is named after literally the city that he's from in Hokkaido, Japan. He now lives in Tokyo, Japan. But yeah, he's gone on to release a second album with us called Glow. And that was actually like a really big deal for the launch of Monstercat Silk, because the first release we put out when we launched the label was the single Glow. So like the title cut from the album. And then we ended up putting out the full album later that year. And we've had tons of singles and remixes by him over the years in between the albums. And he's putting out a record with us now almost every 2 or 3 months on average, sometimes even more frequently than that. And I think he's really at the pinnacle of his career and his craft. So the fact that he's going to be able to finally come out to Seattle, play for the fans there, and we expect fans coming in from out of town as well, flying in and driving in for that too, because the last time he played a show in the U.S. was almost 10 years ago. So wow, a really big deal for him to finally make it out to Seattle. And yeah, the timing is brilliant. He's writing some of his best music of his career, and he'll hopefully have some songs to premiere at the show. He's going to be playing both nights. So on Friday night, I'm opening for him. I'll play kind of a deeper and then maybe leading into some progressive, and then kind of a set. And then Shingo will play kind of a headliner set with more of his bigger, more anthemic tracks and kind of similar sounding tracks for the remainder of the night, closing out the night. Then on Saturday, the following day, he's going to open for BT. That'll give him the opportunity to play a deeper set where he can showcase some of his chiller tracks and, sort of melodic house and deep house tracks.
And that's Friday, May 12th and Saturday, May 13th.
Yes. Thank you for giving the dates. It is that weekend, the 12th and 13th. Both nights are 9 p.m. to at least 2 a.m., maybe later if, things are still going off. So at least 5 hours of great music. Not to mention, we have 2 local heroes, local legends. We have my dear friend Eric Weber, aka Webb, as well as Johnny Monsoon playing a B2B set both nights to kick off the festivities. So definitely come early. They'll be starting off they'll kicking things off at 9 o'clock. and then probably playing for about an hour and a half or so both nights to kick things off. They're both
Nice.
wonderful DJs. Darren, you can speak to their careers and
Absolutely.
your friendship to them, but they've been in the Seattle scene, from what I understand, for literally over 20 years playing shows.
Yeah, about that. I think I started back in 97, 98 at Last Supper Club, and Johnny was just getting his kicks in then.
Yeah, and they're also super relevant to Silk's music. They play a lot of, well, like I think historically they come from the trance and progressive world, but they also are really skilled with playing deeper music as well, and melodic house, progressive house. So my guess is that their set will be on the chiller side as a sort of a warm up, but it's going to be a really dope set on both nights from them because they're great DJs.
What's crazy is I was just looking at the history, looking at our website, and we actually had BT on the show back in 2013.
Awesome.
He was playing at Q nightclub here in Seattle, and we had set up our live stream to stream live from the show, and we were allowed to stream part of his set live. But once it hit a certain track, and he gave us a sign like, "Okay, turn the stream off now." And we were able to stream that show. But funny enough, I had all my gear set up backstage, and I don't think he'll ever remember this, but my laptop was open to my Facebook account, and I'm sitting there by the DJ booth, about 10 feet away from him. He walks up to my computer, and he types into my Facebook account. He goes, "This is why you shouldn't leave your laptop and Facebook open backstage, because somebody's going to come by and post this."
Oh my God.
And I took a picture of him doing it, and I'm like,
that's hilarious.
So BT just kind of jumped on and made
little did he know, or maybe he did know, that like we're now in the era where you have to avoid hacks and like phishing scams like every minute, and people constantly trying to send you links that you inadvertently click on, and you end up getting your Facebook hacked, or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So yeah, like word to wise, he was probably right on about that.
Yeah, two-factor authentication. I have it for all my major accounts. So
definitely,
I have had the people that get their Instagram hacked and they're locked out, and people start asking them, "Can I borrow money? Can I borrow money?" Like, that's not me.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's a crazy world out there navigating this and having to be aware of all these issues.
20 years ago, I was in broadcast television, basically doing broadcast TV. There was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no. I mean, MySpace, I guess, was there.
Yeah, Silk started on MySpace. I mean, when we first started, that sort of was the main social media site that we would use to find artists, besides like SoundCloud. But SoundCloud wasn't really social. It was more just music centric, and it still is more music, like pretty much almost entirely music centric. So yeah, like MySpace it really helped us. We would search for artists by genre, and like would just kind of go. I think we would filter by country as well, and we would just kind of go through MySpace profiles to see like who we could find. I want to say like Soundprank we might have found on MySpace, who later became a really successful and decorated artist on Silk and Anjuna Deep. Maybe even, believe it or not, maybe even Yato, because we worked with Yato before, back when he was exclusively releasing music as Something Good. He has since gone back to release more music under that project with one of his friends. But yeah, we had put out a bunch of records by Something Good, and I think we found Something Good through his MySpace page or something. Yeah.
If you could go back 25 years in music history, or forward 50 years in music future, which way would you go and why?
Ooh, that's tough. Well, I won't overthink it. I find that I'm very nostalgic in general when it comes to art and music. And, I mean, just to start off this call, I talked about how BT and Chicane and Robert Miles inspired us. Well, 25 years ago, that was when those guys put out their seminal albums. Like when they put out those albums in the late 90s that became like the defining albums of that space for, to this day, people look back at, Far From the Maddening Crowds by Chicane, Behind the Sun, and BT had two albums also at the end of the 90s, EMA and I think it's ECSM. Sometimes I get the letters confused, but I think it's ECSM. Those two were the ones with all those great hits, like Remember, Mercury and Solace by BT. I mean, I could name a million songs by him just from that period that are amongst my favorite songs of all time, electronic music songs of all time. So there's the nostalgic side of it for me is like, well, that was the golden era. Like that's when the music really like created. I think the melodic and emotional style of electronic music that they were writing in that time still just resonates for me. The other thing about that era was it was a little bit more innocent with piracy, right? So it was a time when people were purchasing music more frequently, and both physical and digital, and like you didn't we weren't as worried about just like all these trends kind of conspiring against the industry and making it harder and harder for artists to make a living. So yeah, it would be fun to go back to an era where like you could sell thousands of records, you could sell thousands of CDs, you could count on more or support digitally of music. Now we have to rely exclusively on streaming, which is fine, and I actually embrace the streaming revolution. It's been here for a while now. It's not like this is old news at this point, and we're Silk is all in on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon, and other DSPs. But I do kind of miss that era of like fans supporting the songs more directly.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was a few years ago, but I think they started counting YouTube plays towards your overall like to make you go platinum or gold or whatever. I think they started counting YouTube plays, and technology. It kind of leads into my next question here. Is technology has moved really fast and changed over the years. If it wasn't, we were doing our show as a live streaming DJ show, started in 2009, and it was ahead of its game. I mean, there were people out there that were streaming, there were DJs that were streaming, but the volume that we were doing it at, people weren't doing it like that. And it was so interesting that when 2020 hit and everybody jumped online, and my phone was just blowing up off the hook, because I was the guy that had been doing it for 10 years, and now we're getting into VR. I'm talking with people that are doing AR experiences. Just spoke with the guy who started up an app called Unity, UNITEA. Check it out. It's definitely about that fan engagement. I mean, they got some big names on board, some big activations they've done at major festivals. But the whole thing is to kind of bridge that gap between fan and artist, rather than like social media. I can go to somebody's social media page and like something or like their post, but the Unity app will basically allow me to earn what's called karma. And I can cash that karma in for anything from merchandise to pre-releases to backstage passes and meet and greets.
Cool.
Very all cool. This different kind of stuff. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And they have like an augmented reality experience built in, which we do our silent disco, silent concert events. And so I'm waiting for the glasses to come out. Hopefully Apple or whoever going to release them first. Yeah. So we can actually have an augmented reality experience with each of the different channels. So if you have the red channel, you have the red channel experience, and the blue channel experience, and you can just switch the glasses up as you switch the channel in the headsets. But
very cool.
Technology moves very fast in DJ land. And if you could think of something that's not on the market today, but in your vision would be really amazing to be out there for DJs, producers in the market, what would that be?
Okay, I have an idea for that one. But first, I have to fact check myself and correct a mistake I made about the BT's first two albums, because it's going to haunt me if I don't. I mentioned that his first two albums were EMA, and I think I said ECSM. It is ESCM, which stands for Electric Sky Church Music. That, of course, is the album that had Flaming June, which is probably one of the most famous dance music rave anthems ever. And it was such a big record for me. Actually, Chicane remixed it, so it was extra special for me because like two of my favorite artists on one song. So forgive me, BT, for screwing that up, but hopefully we set the record straight. Yeah, let's talk about innovations in tech that I would really welcome. The first thought I had was a more direct way for fans to immediately follow artists once they hear a song on a streaming service. So you might, if you just think about your experience listening to Spotify or Pandora or wherever you listen to music. Usually it's very passive. Usually you hear the song as a soundtrack to your day. You're working, you're studying, you're driving home. It's the amount of conversions to like, or the percentage of time that people actually take that extra step of like, who's this artist? I want to start following this artist from now on. happens much more rarely than you might expect. Like the conversion rate is often very low. One of the reasons is that the DSPs themselves don't have a convenient way, or maybe don't have an incentive to make it extremely obvious, like what are the social media pages of that artist or the websites of that artist. In part because it might be viewed as competition, and it takes the audience off platform if they then are linked elsewhere. So I guess I would love to see a way for artists just to get more recognition from streaming, where if you fall in love with a song, I want you to then have no friction to be following that artist for the rest of their career. And we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. That was one of the difficult things that I want to explain to people about, getting into like live streaming, is if they use a platform like Twitch or YouTube, you're basically saying, come watch me on Twitch, come watch me on YouTube. But at the end of that video, it might pop up 9 other videos that aren't related to you, and it takes them off your page.
Right.
As opposed to if you create the branding experience and get your own domain name, your own website, and embed those videos on the website, then that traffic's going to your website to watch that content, even though you might be hosting it with YouTube or Twitch, but they're still having that, you're controlling the environment on your website, and they're staying there, which helps your Google engine, it helps your search engine go up and things like that. And, I can totally understand how there wouldn't be an incentive for Apple to do that. Like if they're leaving iTunes or.
Yeah, if you have to leave the platform to go on a competitor's platform, then they're typically not going to necessarily want to make that convenient for you. But I would love to see artists just get more support and like long-term fan conversion from these platforms than they are currently.
Mm-hmm. Now, if who's been your biggest influence? I know you've dropped BT and Chicane. And who's been your biggest influence?
I'm not exaggerating when I say that those are heroes that I still listen to this day all the time. Like mm-hmm. I can pull up those albums, even their more recent work, and always feel at home musically and aesthetically with my taste. And it's funny because like the fact that we're working with BT now, it's definitely, it's surreal for me, but in a way I kind of feel like we put out the bat signal for 15 years, and that signal was like, listen to all the echoes of your work in our new releases. Do you hear it? Do you hear your influence? Do you hear the inspiration? And then eventually, the hope is that the inspiration does encounter it somehow, and it's not that big of a scene that it's like a crazy thought that a promo would find their way onto BT's desk or Chicane's desk. Tragically, Robert Miles passed away, I believe, in his late 40s, so he's no longer with us. So I never had an opportunity to meet him, but I've had the pleasure of meeting Chicane's manager and spending time with him even as recently as this past year in London, and it was just a beautiful moment for me to share that sort of camaraderie of how important he was for Silk and for me personally. And so with electronic music, those are the guys. I think I also need to give a huge shout out to Above and Beyond, because Above and Beyond have been heroes of mine musically, but also kind of like entrepreneurially, like their business savvy, their ability to grow a label and a community so organically has been a massive inspiration for me and for Silk as an extension of me. I'm so amazed by what they've accomplished as artists, but also like as label owners, and the direction they've gone, I think has been very like ethical, and they've done it the right way. They've built a community the right way.
Mm-hmm. Totally. What is the most important thing that a record label should be doing for their artists, and are most labels doing a good job?
We talk about this all the time internally, but it's something that we can just as easily share externally, which is that, we consider the primary role of a label, providing promotional lift to an artist's career and to their music. If as a label partner, we can't provide extra support for a release, then it doesn't really behoove an artist to collaborate with us and to work with us. They can just as easily release themselves, either direct to DSPs or work with a different partner, a different label. So labels really have to commit to finding as many relevant promotional opportunities for releases as possible that will bring additional listeners and in turn additional revenue for the releases.
Yeah, it's funny. We're getting ready to. It's been in talks for a while, but kind of a dream of mine of one of the arms or extensions of the DJ sessions is to create our own label and
Very cool.
have our own label, and then we're still deciding which direction we're going. We have everything lined up. I have somebody that's coaching me through the whole process and has the connections. That's what they help artist development. They do this, and when I started working, it was with Luke from the Futuristic Polar Bears, and they do artist development, artist management. And so we were talking on and off for a long time, but then he came in and started doing some additional outreach work for us over here by opening that Rolodex of his and knocking on some doors and getting some interviews for us and stuff. But we're super excited to start a label over here. And, just when you look at it, all that stuff that goes into it, that people don't know what goes on in the background to make a label happen. They go, oh, I got a label and I put songs out. There's a lot more that goes on in the background.
Very true. It really has to be a labor of love. You really have to have grit, which is sort of the latest buzzword in entrepreneurial circles. You have to have the ability to persevere, but because you're like ideologically committed to it, like you really believe that, it's your hobby, it's your passion, and you really believe that this is what you're supposed to be doing. And so that you can kind of weather the storms and deal with the highs and the lows. If you have that much passion for it, you can persevere. You can survive the kind of vicissitudes of the industry and the highs and lows. But you're right; it's a really difficult endeavor to start a label, even though it's also a lot of fun. And there's a lot of competition. I haven't looked recently, but I think, don't quote me, but I think there's over 70,000 labels that are registered on Beatport alone. Just on Beatport. So these are just like electronic music labels that are independent labels, all fighting for bandwidth on that particular platform. But, in general, Spotify is getting, something like 20,000 or more new songs a day on their platform. I mean, it's outrageously competitive. So as long as you're willing to fight the good fight and recognize that it's going to be a struggle, and it's even a challenge for major independent labels like Monstercat to continue to get the support, we have to fight for it. If this is your calling, if you feel drawn to it on every level, emotionally, spiritually, not just like as something that you see as being like something to make money, or like a little outlet for your time, I think you have a shot. You have a shot of really making a splash.
Well, and that's, we work with a number of DJs. We have our own internal resident DJs, and some of them are producers as well, that they release their own stuff. And, our thought is to become kind of a one-stop shop for an artist. If they wanted to be signed on with a prominent live streaming show, they want to release tracks, we can help them, that whole process of artist development.
Yeah.
That was one of the original concepts of the foundations of the DJ sessions, was to get, we started in Seattle, and Johnny Monsoon was one of our first DJs that came over and played in my bedroom. And the idea is that I was the TV video guy. They were DJs. They wouldn't in a million years ever think about getting webcams and setting it up in their home living room or studio or whatever until 2020. But, I wanted to show the world what I saw, who I partied with, who I hung out with, and I'd be that video arm or that podcasting arm that would say, here, come on my platform. We'll show you to the world. We're featured partner here and this, and that, and the other. And that was always a joyous thing. But yeah, I just want to make sure that my team has an accessible outlet. So I say, go shop your album, go shop your label, go shop this. And the problem that we run into here in Seattle is that there isn't really any middle management. You couldn't make a living managing an artist. You'd have to do it as a labor of love. And even getting those artists out there with all the competition and getting a tour booked or something like that. It's like, why are we booking you from Seattle when we already got 500 local people here that we know are going to bring people to the club? And the big one now is, they look at your socials. on your booking and saying, "Oh, you don't even have over 10,000 people following you on Instagram," or
Yeah, or the latest is sort of like monthly listeners on Spotify.
yeah.
It's a quick metric that people can look at very, on their phones very quickly. They
Mhm.
can open up an artist Spotify and be like, oh, he only has 10,000 Spotify monthly listeners versus hundreds of thousands or millions. And that can unfortunately be a difference maker for some artists, even though that particular metric doesn't, maybe to state the obvious, doesn't paint a full picture necessarily of an artist's following or listenership. It just kind of gives a sense of how well the music is suited for the goals of that specific platform, for their curation, you know, as they define what's relevant and what's important and what's meaningful and what's the best and what's, so um, that's kind of like a PSA more like of anything, of like, if for any artists that are listening, please don't be discouraged if you don't have as many monthly listeners as other artists, you don't feel like are at your same level artistically. It's really not objectively a metric of like the quality of your work or how exceptional you are.
Mhm.
It says something culturally maybe about like what's relevant to those platforms, but I really don't believe it's a benchmark for like how good you are, how skilled you are, how beautiful or moving or memorable your music is.
You kind of just answered my next question I was going to ask you, which is there something you'd like to say to new and upcoming producers to watch out for when it comes to making their career successful? I think what you just said kind of sums that up. Don't
Yeah,
be.
that's sort of like a little bit of a disclaimer, but maybe I would add to that in terms of like, if specifically in response to what you just asked me. I think I would say that like an important word that we talk about a lot at Monstercat is intention. Like, what is the intention of a release? Is the goal just to put out whatever you think is a beautiful song? Is the goal just to accommodate a particular artist who has a vision for a single or an EP or an album? Or are you approaching it from, okay, we have a very specific promotional goal in mind, or a playlisting goal in mind, or a radio goal in mind? That's the intention of this record, is to unlock that particular goal. So a lot of artists, especially starting out, will write music that they love, they'll sign it or self-release it, and then inevitably they'll get really disappointed if the songs don't blow up. Like, it's not like a Spotify hit or a YouTube hit. And it leads to a lot of dark energy and a lot of resentment. To kind of preempt that type of an emotional reaction, I would encourage artists to really think about, before they put out a release, what are the realistic promotional opportunities for the song. Have a conversation with your manager. If you don't, you might not have a manager, but if you do, have that conversation. Have the conversation with the label in advance. Like, what are our targets for this? What do we realistically think is possible? Doesn't mean that it's a guarantee you'll get them, or even like a extremely high likelihood, but at least you'll be aligned on what's possible, and that it'll prevent potentially major discouragement or resentment if your song doesn't have quite the shelf life or visibility or recognition that you were hoping for.
Mhm. And how do you now? You are head of A&R for Monstercat Silk, correct?
That's right.
And to our audience members who do not know what A&R is, what is A&R?
Yeah, so it stands for artist and repertoire. It's basically the liaison of a label that works most closely with an artist from the earliest stages of a release. So we're talking about the stages where an artist is ready to send a demo. They need a music person to really evaluate the demo carefully and critically and decide if it's the right fit for whichever entity they're representing. So in my case, I'm representing Monstercat, the company Monstercat, and specifically the Silk label within Monstercat. So you have a role of being very close to the artists in that capacity, in terms of like giving them direct feedback, giving them encouragement and support, just in general, of like kind of helping them navigate the industry. And in my opinion, a very critical role for an A&R is to try to develop a really strong rapport with the artist that you're working with, and not so that it's not just all business, not just like, all right, what have you done for me lately? What, you haven't written a song in 2 months. I'm waiting for you to send me a song. Like, no, it's a much deeper relationship than that. I'm very lucky that I consider all of our leading artists on Silk to be friends. They're all friends of mine. These are individuals that, or groups that I would genuinely go out of my way to hang out with and spend time with. And we're kind of a reflection of one another in some ways in terms of our values. And like, obviously we have a similar taste in music. And for my money, that's one of the best things in life for compatibility. If you're looking for someone out there that you're compatible with, if they have a similar taste in music, that's as good a start as anything to like make new friends, right? And so I think there's something about having a similar taste symbolically representing a lot of other areas where you're compatible. And so, yeah, I've developed some wonderful friendships. I've known Shingo, for example, for almost 15 years. We've spent time together in various cities around the world, most recently in Amsterdam and London. The guys that were there that weekend that you met, Prof I've worked with for 14, 15 years. He also had his first release like Shingo in 2009 with Silk. He's a buddy of mine. Vintage and Morelli, I think Marco Kubrich. He played in Seattle at Aura several years ago on our 500th episode tour. He's a dear friend of mine. He's based in Serbia, so we don't get to see each other that much, but we will connect in ADE or various events that we're putting on. And he's a dear friend. So I just think like as an A&R, it's just sort of those are examples of how you build these wonderful relationships over time. And the labels that I looked up to when I was first starting out, including Anjuna, because Anjuna started to about 21 or 22 years ago, and Silk is only 15 years old. So they're a little bit older than us. I looked up to them and still do in terms of the relationships that they were building with their core artists. And you can see there are artists that are still working with them. Matter of fact, perfect example, this weekend, Oliver Smith, I saw was playing in Seattle. Yeah. I think Oliver Smith had one of their first releases on Anjuna like 20 some years ago. He was releasing as Smith and Pledger with Mark Pledger. And I think he was friends with Jono at university in the UK. And they've been friends for like 20, 25 years. And they're still working together to this day. So those friendships are so valuable and so integral to the A&R process.
Yeah, I mean, how many demos do you get submitted? I mean, is your name prominently out there and people are constantly like sliding you USB drives or sending you links?
It used to be USB drives more than it is now. I think now it's pretty like 99% of the time we're getting demos through our official demo submission portal. We use Label Radar at the moment. We have, so you go to monstercat.com and click Contact Us. You can literally see their buttons for each of the labels, Silk, Instinct, and Uncaged. You can click which label you think your music is best suited for, and then submit the demo through those portals. So we get a lot of music through there. We also get a lot of music directly from our veteran artists because they know us. We have a rapport, we have a relationship. They know how to find us, and they can send us their music very easily. And our emails kind of inevitably get passed around, and so we get a lot of random demos from people that we don't know or never met before, but someone's shared our email with them, and that's fine. That's 100% cool. We generally will then just steer them to the Label Radar page and be like, thanks for contacting us, but we would like you to actually submit this more officially here so that we can keep track of everything. And I can't vouch for every label in the industry, but I can honestly say that Silk listens to every single demo that is sent to us. That does not mean that we respond to every demo, because we absolutely do not have the bandwidth to respond to 50 to 100 demos a week. It's just too much for our team to handle. And I think that's kind of the industry standard. But obviously, if it is something that resonates for us, of course, we will then reply back and say, yeah, this really caught our ear and we'd like to pursue this.
Do you think that with the advent of ChatGPT-4 coming out and how it's supposed to be a huge increase in powerfulness over Chat version 3 or 3.5, do you think there could be a way that the A&R process could be done by AI? If you said, this is what I'm looking for, or
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think certain aspects of the process maybe could be automated a bit better, like the funneling of the music to us. But I don't know yet if it's sophisticated. I don't know if it's sophisticated enough yet to like have the ear of Silk. Like I don't how would you code? I guess that's there's an obvious answer. The ChatGPT would listen to all of the past Silk releases, and it would recognize certain patterns, and would then have a real algorithm for like what our taste is, and then could decide if a certain song is suitable for Silk. So maybe that could be automated and could be a filter. But at the very end of that funnel, I think we would still need the human element of us determining, like, not just if it musically is on point for Silk, but does it fit certain goals that we have for the label? Does it fit the promotional opportunities that we have available? There's a wide range of considerations that go into those decisions.
Absolutely, and it's going to be interesting to see, because I think we were talking a little pre-show before the interview about an AI DJ, and how you could program that DJ and say it's these songs, these tracks are what I want to play in the club, and then
Yeah,
make a virtual DJ. And
exactly. Like the exact example that I gave, we were talking about this before we got started officially today. What if the script was like, it's got to be top 40 songs by these 20 artists or these 30 artists, and then the AI could generate a continuous, seamless mix of music by those artists, and maybe you create some kind of visual experience as well, where it's an avatar. We've already seen holograms being used, right? Paul McCartney did a performance with John Lennon recently. No, Glastonbury. I think it was Glastonbury or something, where he had John Lennon behind him singing with him. It's like Tupac was generated through a hologram at like. There's been so many sort of baby steps or even big steps towards this conversation that we're having now, and I don't think we're that far away from it.
Yeah, and you look at, like we were talking a little bit earlier, I mentioned augmented reality and virtual reality. We're super excited that we have our virtual reality nightclubs going up, but to have a DJ come in and play via live stream, but then also have them be a participant in a virtual world, they have to have another separate laptop up, and then their avatars in there. But you're seeing DJs now that are wearing the gloves and everything, and they're actually fully immersed into that virtual reality experience. I don't want to give away about all the ideas that we're doing, but I told you a couple ideas that we had before the show about virtual DJs. We want to kind of be the first to see if we can crack that nut and do something interesting virtually. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I actually did my first chat GPT like last week. I typed in, tell me about Darren Bruce, the executive producer of the DJ sessions. And it was like 99% correct, like spot on. Wow. I don't know where. The only thing it said is that I released CDs, and we released CDs or something. I'm like, no, we've never released any music.
Right.
So I threw that in there, and I was like, okay, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's a strange new world right now. I mean, I'm not. I can't honestly say that I'm the best. I'm an authority on this topic, but I'm generally excited about it. I think it's just really neat to have like access to knowledge in ways you never did before in general. Like at your fingertips. I think like I'm obviously very scared about any technology being used unethically, but just specifically addressing the point of like having knowledge available to the world in a way that could be constructive or just like more facile and accessible could be really cool.
Not posting pictures of cats and memes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think as long as we have internet culture, we're gonna have meme culture. Meme culture and internet culture are like synonymous. But yeah. So
did you has the discussion come up, or are you in discussions, or are you staying away from this 3-letter word, NFTs? What's your thoughts on NFTs?
Yeah. I'm having a deja vu. Like maybe you and I spoke about this at last year or the year before. But if not, Monstercat was one of the first electronic music labels that launched several consecutive drops, NFT drops, most of which were on one of the leading curation platforms for NFTs called Nifty Gateway. So it's like a site that kind of filters based on brands and artists that are already have a level of recognition and credibility, so that you're not like just free for all, kind of like, who's this, what's this, do you know if it's real, authentic, and has some merit behind it. But yeah, we kind of dove headfirst into that into the NFT revolution in recent years. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I think, if we're talking about it at this moment, the market has been a little bit shaky, to put it mildly. I think it's like most bubble, most things. There's always like the risk of it becoming a bubble, and I think there was a justifiable concern around prices, not specifically with Monstercat, but in general, prices being way above what they should be to be sustainable. So I mean, this probably sounds like giving my own company lip service, but I genuinely believe that like we were very ethical in making sure the price points were not crazy for the NFTs that we were selling. We even had ones that were sold for 50 cents just to allow our fans to have an opportunity to dabble in NFT culture without feeling like they were taking a huge financial risk. So yeah, I think our price points for the NFTs we've sold have been very fair. I think in general, we just have to be very careful about all of the speculators and all of the bad actors in the space that are looking to cash grab and kind of ruthlessly exploit human tendencies, which include our tendency to want to gamble, our tendency to look for high risk, high reward type opportunities. It can be very addictive in that way and very dangerous in that way. And yeah, I think my take on NFTs is like, I think it's an extraordinary moment for art because it gives artists another legitimate avenue for exposure and revenue. And I believe that the blockchain lends legitimate authenticity to art. Like I'm one of the people on the side of like, I believe that the blockchain is a real thing that legitimizes that it is an artist piece that has like, that's one of 100 or one of 10 or one of 1,000, just like a physical print. You might have one of 100 prints of a photograph. I do not differentiate personally between digital and physical in that regard. But both are equally authentic to me as long as it's verifiable on the blockchain in the case of NFTs. So I personally am a collector. I own pieces of art that are very personal to me by artists who, frankly, I wouldn't be able to afford if it meant buying their sculptures or buying their photographs or digital art physical art pieces like paintings or whatever. So it's really special to me that I get to own a work by an artist that I love, that is inspiring to me, and I get to have it on my, available on, through an internet connection, and I can share that with my friends and my family, and I can curate my collection digitally, just like you would at your house. But ironically, more people that I'm close to would be more likely to pay attention to what I'm doing digitally than they would actually be coming to my house and checking out my physical art or my apartment and checking out my physical art collection. So I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for artists. It's an opportunity for collectors also to engage with art in a new way. And overall, I'm very excited about NFT culture.
Yeah, I saw this one guy, but probably sometime last year. I think what he did, he made a series of paintings, like 7 or 8 paintings. Then he went and took pictures of all of them, made NFTs of the pictures, and then destroyed the paintings. So if you wanted that art collection, you didn't know the physical wasn't there anymore.
Yeah,
Here's the NFT.
Yeah, I've seen variations of that with the goal of keeping supply low, because the general principle is the less supply, the more rare, and the more rare, the more valuable. And that's been an age-old principle with art, and it's kind of wired into our psychology that we perceive rarity as having value. We perceive, endangered species in the animal kingdom have more value to us than animals that we consider to be overpopulated. It's just hardwired that's the, so it's a similar concept, I think. And yeah, we're rarity drives value in the marketplace consistently.
Speaking of rarity or scarcity, or it kind of falls into this next question you mentioned, being, that's the word you just used.
Scarcity, rarity, value.
Value, all that. Do you prefer DJing at larger scale festivals, or would you rather DJ at more intimate nightclubs? I know you're coming up here to do Aura Seattle with Shingo and BT, and that's not a big festival. I mean, I think the place might 500 maybe. I'm not sure. I know they just expanded.
Aura, I think, has about six. It has, I think there's like 600 or 700 cap in the main room. I know they've expanded the club recently, so I haven't been there since the expansion. But let's just say 650, 700 cap, which means 700 people could fit in the club, at least in the main room. But yeah, to answer your question, I just heard an interview, and I don't think it's a new interview. I think it's at least a few years old, of Rick Rubin, the famous legendary producer, who I'm sure you know, and Andre 3000 of Outkast. I love Outkast. I went to an Outkast show like 20-some years ago when I was in high school, and always been a big fan of them. And I don't know how it came up exactly, but I think it was Rick Rubin that said that, like, the bigger the crowd, the further away the fans are, as not necessarily literally, almost like figuratively, where like you start to lose that intimate attachment to the audience, and of like, who is actually appreciating this, and can we like almost like lock eyes and connect over these songs. You get to the big stages, and then on a more literal level, like the blinding lights of a big stage, and it's almost like you're performing for some nebulous crowd, but you lose touch with who they are and what your music means to them and why they're there. And there's something to be said for like those smaller shows, just feeling like you can almost like reach out and hug and high five your fans, literally or figuratively. I know Boiler Room has become a phenomenon in the industry, and I think one of the reasons is that the Boiler Room aesthetic or vibe, not aesthetic, but the vibe of a Boiler Room show, where you're like literally shoulder to shoulder with your fans, and they're jumping up and down with you, and they're sweating next to you while they're dancing. Like, it feels so raw and visceral, and it feels like you couldn't be more connected to your audience in that moment, and everyone is on the same level. It's not like God is a DJ. You're up on this 20-foot pedestal podium. You're not on this like elevated stage where you're being essentially represented as a larger than life figure, where you no longer are on the same plane as your fans. And I personally don't dig that. Like, I would rather feel like my audience is right there by my side.
Mm-hmm. I was talking with, did an interview with DJ Colette, and she tours frequently with another, I can't remember the gentleman she tours with, but they were both in the interview because they were both on tour together. And we were talking, and they said, we specifically like playing clubs like the Monkey Loft or these smaller, intimate venues so we can connect with the fans. We don't take on those 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people shows because we like to connect with fans. I could totally see that. We used to have a club up here in Seattle that I saw a number of artists at. It was called Sea Sound Lounge back in the day. And Sea Sound, I mean, there was like 150 people, I think, maybe 200. They packed it, but you were no more than 10 feet away from the DJ that was playing.
Very cool.
It was very intimate, vibey, loungy kind of kickback, and you're sitting there going, well, I mean, one night I was there and there was a song I was listening to that I got off my friend had a compilation CD, and I listened to this song, but from Chuck Love. And I was sitting there in the Sea Sound Lounge one night, and all of a sudden he drops the song, the Jimster remix version of it, which is the one I listen to over and over again. I get on my phone and I pull up the song on my phone. I go to the DJ booth and I'm like, is this him? Is this guy made this song? And she's like, yes. I'm like, no way. And I didn't know Chuck Love like played 7 different instruments and sang over his tracks and all this crazy stuff. And I went out to Winter Music Conference. Actually, that was 2008. Now I think about it, because I went to Winter Music Conference in 2009 and went and checked out one of his shows there too. And he's just a guy who's just like chilling on the bench with his horn, like polishing it up, like, okay, what's up?
Yeah, man. That really speaks to me, that anecdote you just shared. And we actually had an experience not long ago in LA. It was this year. where we did a show at Catch One in LA, and there's a few rooms at that venue, and the one that we chose for the first LA event was, I think, maybe like 150 or 200 capacity, so very small, especially by Monstercat standards. Monstercat often does kind of big blowout events at cultural, like Tomorrowland and like major festival events where we could have, I think we had 13,000 people at Compound this year, which is our festival in Vancouver. So it was a little bit of a new thing for us to do something that was that intimate, but everyone loved it because there were people like hanging off the balcony. There was like this stairwell, the spiral staircase in the middle of the club. People were like dancing on that. And there was like this kind of overhang balcony thing. And there was like 40 people behind the DJs just hanging out and dancing, and just felt really raw and like authentic to DJ culture.
Totally. I always like, I went to EDC for my first time in 2021. And granted, my friend said that I'm surprised you can see the pavement, because that's how many people are usually there, but you can actually see the pavement. Like it was sparse. It was right after, still kind of pandy coming out of it, a lot of fun stuff. And I remember, you are looking at this, you're seeing this DJ and they're like this big. Even
Right.
the funniest one is Shaq's tagline under his Diesel name is, "I'm the world's biggest DJ." But even Shaq's set, he's a big, huge guy, but he's like up on the stage and you're looking at him and it's like,
That's
okay,
funny.
you're not really that big, Shaq. But
Yeah.
being able to connect with the fans is huge, and we're looking forward to being back out there on the road again. We have a great working relationship with the team out of Arizona. They're based out of Arizona with their Relentless Beats PR team, media team, and they do a lot of events every year. So we're super excited to get back out on the road, go nationally, internationally now, over to places like ADE, and I've never been to like Melkweg, and then there was Escape. I think we even checked that club out,
Cool.
which was just amazing. But if you could put one producer, up-and-coming producer, in the spotlight, who would that be and why?
I haven't mentioned his name yet today, so I want to mention him now. He's based out of Qatar, so he's a Middle Eastern artist. He's worked with us since 2018-ish, maybe 2017. He goes by the name AMR, A.M.R. And he's easily one of the leaders of the label at this point in time in terms of his listenership, the response to his music being so positive. He's worked now with some of our friendly competitors as well. Like he did a remix for Above and Beyond. I think it was, I guess technically maybe an Ocean Lab track, but Above and Beyond presents Ocean Lab. He recently appeared on a record with Robbie East on This Never Happened. So he's worked with Lane 8's label recently as well. But yeah, he is one of our leaders. He released his debut album on Monstercat Silk in 2020, and very excited to tell you that he will be releasing his second album this year with us. So he's put a lot of music out with us already, and now he has a whole other album about to drop with this year. We'll put out the singles starting in June and through the summer, and then I think we're looking at a November album release date.
We'll have to get him on the show.
Yeah, it sounds great. He's a brilliant guy artistically, and just like a very thoughtful person as well. Musically, he brings this sort of organic house meets melodic house meets progressive, and then the X factor is like he brings world music textures into his songs. So a lot of his songs have these beautiful, sometimes Middle Eastern motifs, sometimes African motifs. He's went on vacation in Bali, and then he brought back some influences from Bali, and like that kind of informed his music. So I tend to really love, in general, like new age world music, and when I hear those textures and those types of vocal motifs of sort of like indigenous and native cultures to those other areas being incorporated into melodic house and organic house, it really speaks to me. And he does that really well. And he has some vocal tracks on this album that I think are really extraordinary. Not quite ready to reveal the collaborators, but some really beautiful vocal collaborations that will be, most of which will be singles on the album.
Nice. I got him queued up. I'm gonna go listen to some right after
Yeah,
this.
he's awesome. Obviously, you can find him everywhere, Spotify, and he's on socials as well.
So, other than the big news that you're coming to Seattle in May for the doubleheader weekend with Shingo and BT, is there anything else you'd like to let our DJ Sessions fans know about?
Well, just to kind of highlight that point, definitely head over to auraseattle.com. Aura is just ORA and then Seattle.com. You can see both tickets for both nights. The Friday and the Saturday, May 12th and 13th, are on sale. They do have some kind of special pass where you can get a discounted price if you buy the pass for the whole weekend. So consider that option. I can't, I'm very biased, but I can't speak loudly enough about how amazing the music's going to be for that weekend. I mean, Shingo and BT are legends, and they are amongst the best artists in progressive, in trance, and now more recently melodic house, especially for Shingo, in the world. They are acknowledged as being leaders in the space, and if you're a fan of really beautiful, emotional, melodic electronic music, come out and join us. Even if you're not familiar with Shingo and BT, I promise you that you will really be inspired by the records that they'll be performing and mixing. Um, Other than that, stay tuned for a big project with BT that we'll be announcing soon. I've already kind of teased the AMR album, so definitely keep posted on that. And yeah, I would just say, make sure you follow Monstercat Silk wherever you listen to music. We have a new releases playlist on Spotify. Just type in Monstercat Silk new releases, and it'll come right up. You find us on YouTube if you're a YouTuber. We have new releases coming out every week. Tuesday is our new release day. So every Tuesday we have a new release. Could be a single, could be an EP, could be an album. And yeah, wherever you enjoy music, go there and you can find Monstercat Silk.
That's awesome. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We're definitely going to stay in touch with you. We'll see you in Seattle in person again here soon. Might even have to bust out the mobile studio for you guys to take a tour around the city. And
Thanks, man.
I don't know if you've ever seen our mobile studio truck, the big glass box truck. And
I haven't, but I was at your apartment or your old, which
oh
I don't know if it was your apartment or your old studio or both. But when we were doing the 450th episode, Marsh 11 and I had a chance to record do a set there before the show at Club Contour. So that was really cool.
Yeah, so we have a glass box truck with a concert grade sound system on the back.
Cool.
That Mackie supplied to us. It's one of our sponsors, and it's loud and it gets a lot of heads turning, and it's fun. But yeah, looking forward to having you here in Seattle in May. Congratulations on all the success, especially the partnership with Silk and Monstercat. I'm sure that's just something that
it's been an absolute dream. Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Absolutely. We'll talk with you again here soon.
Thanks, buddy. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah. On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, out there. You can find all that out, though, at our website, thedjsessions.com. I'm your host, Darren, coming to you from the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and that's Jacob Henry on the other side from monstercat.com/silk. Check them out. More music, more hits, and more stuff coming your way on the DJ Sessions. And remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.